Okay, so we're looking at number 23, and looks like we're gonna be having to do a regression because used my calculator and a linear regression. So let's read. A certain town in Colorado called Linearville has been keeping track of their population since 1995. Their population statistics have been summarized in the table below. So it looks like we have a table of the year and then the population. So then it says, using your calculator, generate a linear regression L of t, which can be used to model the population of Linearville. Okay, so when it's modeling Linearville, then that means that basically that my y value is going to be the population. And it says where t represents the years since 1995. Okay, that's really tricky. T is not necessarily the number of years, but it's specifically the years since 1995. So really, if t is 0 when it's 1995, because it hasn't been any years since 1995. So looking at my table, they don't want t to be 1995. Years since 1995, that's going to make this t equal 0. So then let's do the math. 2001, that has been 6 years since 1995. So again, t is representing years since 1995. So I'm making notes of what t actually is going to be, even though my year is different. Because again, t is not going to be just the year, it's going to be the year since 1995. So if you need help doing your math, you can also just do 2006 minus 1995 to see how long it's been. But I'm going to go ahead and just plug in these values. 2010 is 15 years since 1995, and 2018 is 23 years since 1995. This got a lot of people on the first common assessment because we didn't actually make these notes for t. So then it says, let's look back. Using my calculator, generate a linear regression. That means I got to do the lists and spreadsheets. So a linear regression, which can be used to actually write this. So it looks like I just need to have an equation, L of t, and figure out what that needs to be. So at this point, you should go to your calculator, add lists and spreadsheets, and type in your data. Notice that on my year, I did not put 1995 or 2001. I put the 0. I'm talking about t. And the population, I just typed it in. At this point, you should know how to do a regression, but I'll show you. You're going to go to Menu, Statistics, or number 4. Then I'm going to go to Stat Calculations, number 1. And I need to do a linear regression. We know the equation is like mx plus b. I see the most familiar one is number 3, so I'm going to pick number 3. This is when I need to select my list. So my X list, or in this case it was my T, that's going to be my year because that's what I called it in my table, and my Y list is my population. Notice that my calculator is going to save this equation, EQN represents equation, in F1. That's going to be really helpful later. So yours might say something different. You can always change it, but just make a note of which one it's saving in. Mine's F1. Watch, I'm even going to write a little note, F1. I'm going to push OK. And what this gives me is it tells me, hey, your equation is mx plus b. Here's what m is, and here's what b is. And my r squared is 0.99. That means it's a really close fit, because the closer it is to 1, it's a really close fit. So my equation is going to be m, which is 146, so I'm really copying this down. You should be able to do this on your calculator. 0.392, notice 3 decimal places, times x. Well, in this case, x, we're talking about t instead of like an x, so I'm going to make sure I use t because they said to make an equation L of t. So 146.392 t plus my b, which was 3071.286. So I wrote my equation. That would have been like worth probably 2 points. And if I did not put the L of t and use t instead of an x, I probably would have lost a point there. So that was the whole question A. Okay, now it says part B, using your model. Okay, so using this equation, another word for model, what was the estimated population? Okay, so that's going to be like the L or the Y value in 2008. So with this, I want to basically plug in 2008 and know my population. Well, I can't plug in 2008 because I remember that my T that I plug in is actually the year since 1995. So 2008 minus 1995 is actually 13 years. So that's what I'm going to plug in for T. Now I'm going to show you a really quick way to plug this into your calculator without having to plug it into your equation. If you remember, I made a note that this was called F1 when I was doing my regression. So I have two options. From here, I can just, from my documents, go to Doc, and then I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to just insert a calculator. And my calculator is smart enough that it remembers F1. Notice it got bold. And that's going to tell me what my population is when I type in 13. 13 being the year since 1995, which is going to be the year 2008. Push enter, and that is my population. 4,974.384. If they asked you to round, then I would round. If they don't ask you to round, then make sure you include 3 decimal places. If you did not want to do it that way, I want to show you one other quick trick. From here, you can also do it differently. You can go to Doc, and we can insert a graph. If you go to Insert Graphs, we can push, see how it says F2 to start? Usually it starts with F1. Well, to go back up to F1, let's just push the up arrow on your calculator. So on your calculator, you can push the up arrow. And that looks really long, but notice there's that 146.392 big decimal times X plus your Y value. So it has already stored the exact equation in there. So if I push enter, it's going to graph it for me. Now, I may not see it, but if I probably zoom way out, I'm going to be able to see a value. At this point, let's just trace it. Menu, trace, graph trace, and I want to plug in 13, again for my X value, and notice there's the same population that we just got, 4,974.384. Both ways will work, and that is how you can do a regression.